The average woman who starts working from home gains 5 to 15 pounds in the first 18 months. But my client Sarah, who works 50-hour weeks as a marketing director and is also a mum, went from this to this in 17 weeks. No extreme dieting, no 6 a.m. boot camps, no giving up social events. And in this video, I'm going to break down exactly how we done it.
Been really nice to kind of go out and wear the dress that I kind of wanted to wear.
Okay, let's start by talking about what we done to get Sarah the results. And it all started by making sure she had a system that fit in around her lifestyle. When we started, Sarah felt she had three main obstacles holding her back: time and energy, lack of accountability, and having no confidence in knowing what she was doing was the right thing to get her the results she wanted. So let's start with the first one, time and energy. When we first spoke, Sarah explained the majority of her time was either spent working, either in back-to-back meetings all day, catching up on emails at night, and also she needed to be in the office a few times a month, or with her child, who done a lot of extracurricular activities, especially on the weekends. She also mentioned by the time the evening came around, she was absolutely shattered. So we needed a system that was efficient, but also improved her energy levels. So when we first started, we spent a lot of time dissecting her complete schedule and seeing what we could make work and where. With the workouts, we needed to maximize efficiency and impact. We didn't use the workouts to burn calories. That's very inefficient. And for reference, that's only 5% of your daily calories you burn a day comes from exercise. So what we've done instead is we used the workouts as an investment to speed up her metabolism and build some lean muscle mass. When you lift weights, your body breaks down your muscle and then it comes back bigger and stronger. This has the effect of boosting your metabolism because muscle burns more calories throughout the day, and that speeds up 70% of your metabolism. So we made sure the workouts were concise and effective, and we were progressing correctly each month. She told me she already had some equipment at home, so we started her off with 2 full day body workouts using resistance weights, and we made sure they're at home because it just saved on time instead of her going to the gym. With the nutrition, most women I speak to fall into the trap of thinking, if I can just eat less, so maybe skip breakfast, skip lunch from time to time, and I'm just good when I go out to eat, that will be enough. And here's why it's not. When you eat, your body doesn't just store everything as fat. For example, protein is used to maintain muscle tissue, fats are used to create hormones, carbs are used to fuel you throughout the day, especially your brain. So when you deprive your body of the nutrients it needs to survive, it will start to panic. And in doing so, it's going to start by dropping your metabolism, which is obviously the last thing you want if you're trying to lose weight. Sarah had been trying these sort of approaches on and off for the last few months before we first spoke. So the very first thing we needed to do was restore that baseline metabolism in the first few weeks, and we actually done that by eating more. So here's what that looked like for Sarah. Dinner time was important for us, so we worked around that, and for dinners we just used some basic portion principles so that she didn't have to stress too much in the evening with her family dinners. Lunches, we came up with some quick, tasty go-tos, and we made sure these lunches were prepped over the weekend to, 1, buy back some time, and 2, make sure these weren't skipped during the week. And breakfast was a big shift because the food she was eating before wasn't the most optimal for energy balance throughout the day, so we came up with some higher protein, higher healthy fat options. We also made sure we had protocols for the kids' parties, work events, and anything else that came up. The first few weeks, we actually saw the scale slightly rise, which is perfect. Her energy improved, her hunger was more stable, her training performance went up, and we were restoring her metabolic baseline before we went into that fat loss phase. So that initial phase is what most people skip. Outside of the training and nutrition, we came up with some habits and routines she could follow. We looked at routines for her office days versus non-office days. We started to look at where she could be more active. We came up with some sleep protocols. But the most important thing to note is we didn't do this all from day one. And this is where most people go wrong. They wait for the perfect time and the perfect plan, and then they try and go all in and have all the perfect routine, all the habits, and try and perfect that from day one. Aim for the perfect week, and it's usually too much and they can't sustain it. And if it's not too much for the first week, it soon will be by the time you get to week 2 or 3. So we started with some very small tweaks, some basic habits, an extra 10 minutes of walking after she dropped her kids off, switching off the laptop at 9 p.m, a lunchtime walk on her office days. We slowly built these into her routine week in, week out, without overwhelming her all at the start. Now, the second obstacle, accountability. Most women think they need motivation. They don't. They need standards, and then they need someone to hold them to those standards when they're tired and when you have those weeks which are just a little harder. But what most people do is they overlook the first piece, and probably the most important piece, the why. Accountability only works if there's a reason behind it. Now, I'm not going to share Sarah's why. It was very personal and quite frankly very noble, but she had a strong why for needing to do this. Although we created this system that matched her lifestyle, we made sure she had support, guidance in place to get her to the results. None of that would have mattered if Sarah wasn't invested enough to follow through. Sarah was, and that's why it worked. And then the last obstacle we needed to overcome was her confidence in what she was going to do was going to get her the results, and more importantly, once she gets the results, she's going to be able to keep that for the rest of her life. Now, Sarah was obviously feeling a little bit hopeless after coming and trying a few things. She tried a few diets, joined the gym, etc., but hadn't had great results. So in order for her to have confidence this was going to work, she needed to first understand why what she had already been doing hadn't been working for her. Now, I'm not going to dissect everything she's tried before, but pretty much everything hadn't worked for one of these 3 reasons. First, the method was just wrong for her. For example, at one point she tried just cutting out carbs, and I've explained on this channel before why that is a terrible idea if you're a woman over 30. 2, even if it had been the right method for her, she wouldn't have been able to sustain it long enough to see the results. Long-term results don't come from following an unsustainable plan for a few weeks. They come from a complete identity change that only comes if you can be consistent week in, week out, month in, month out. And then 3, even if it was the right method and she could have stuck for it long enough, there was no plan for once she got to the end of the goal, how to come off the plan. So as soon as she would have stopped, any of the weight she had lost would have just come straight back on, because most plans and diets don't have a plan for once you reach that end goal to integrate it back into your lifestyle. So on our first few calls, we made sure Sarah had absolute clarity on why what she had tried before hadn't worked for her. We then made sure we celebrated the small wins along the way to build that momentum to the long-term result. And then once we got to the long-term result, how to come off the plan and integrate into a lifestyle. Now, if you do want to see the full breakdown of how I transition clients off my plan, I have done a full breakdown of my full system on this channel. So if you are interested in what that looks like, I'll make sure to link it at the end. Now, the golden question: how did Sarah manage to go through this transformation whilst working 50-hour weeks and running around after her child? And I'm sorry to tell you, there's no magic answer outside of just pure discipline and planning ahead. At the start, we did spend a lot of time going through her schedule and making sure she had absolute clarity on how to handle anything life was going to throw at her. When we checked in over the weekends, we made sure as much as possible was prepped for the week ahead. Like the lunches I was saying about earlier, blocking out time on her calendar for those workouts, and sending me her meal plans. But at the end of the day, Sarah was the one who committed to the process. Yes, there were weeks which were slower, but overall she had the discipline to push through and see this through to the end. So, well done, Sarah. If you want a hand building a system like this that fits around your schedule, I'll leave a link in the description where you can find out how that will look like. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. And if you did want to see my full working from home system, all the different phases broken down, make sure to watch this video next.